Hey, Yannis, thank you for coming in again. You took over as president of ACM, Association for Computing Machinery, definitely number one in the world in computing science, but so much more. Really tremendous resources, tremendous reach, a great reputation. I guess now in its 76th year of operation. It's definitely the oldest organization in computing science, but computing science is just everywhere. So basically, the ACM is everywhere in some fashion, and you have this illustrious position as president, and all presidents of this organization. It's a carefully vetted process, and the community votes for it, and only people with distinguished backgrounds like yourself become president. And you're quite remarkable in that you're introducing this much bigger vision for ACM. And I mean, I'm been on the board for I think like 12 years now, and you've got the biggest vision I've seen of any president. And of course, I think it's marvelous for the organization. Definitely needed as we progress into the next decades to come. So we're going to explore some of that, and it's a follow-on from the interview I did earlier after you became president, and I recommend people have a look. And I did a Forbes piece just focused on you as president as well. So again, I recommend people have a look, but this is now a continuation. Anyways, I'm grateful for you coming in and sharing more of your insights with our audience.
It's a great pleasure to be here, and thanks, Stephen, for this great introduction. It's president is a role and a title, but the key thing is for good things to happen, and this takes a village for this, and the ACM village, and especially the volunteers, which is a body that I really look forward to be growing in order to address all the challenges in front of us, is are doing all the work. So I appreciate your having me again, and chatting about interesting stuff that ACM is embarking on doing.
In the last interview, we actually explored elements of your background, and you're doing so many transformational things across the world. And again, I recommend the audience have a look at your profile. There's links in your profile of the work you're doing. It's all has tremendous impact globally. But for this interview now, we're gonna progress, and that's because you've been president now for over half a year. So you got a lay of the land of the organization, and you've laid out a really detailed vision, which I think is quite marvelous. So we'll explore that. So in the first question then, what have you learned? Because there's a difference between having different leadership roles within the ACM and then being president of the ACM. there's a difference, right?
Absolutely.
So what have you learned? What has surprised you in taking on the mantle of president of this marvelous organization?
Well, let me start from the surprises. I mean, from every single position, as you said, I mean, you learn a lot, and you come in front of a bunch of things that the organization is doing. But honestly, in the past, this past about 8 months, I never imagined that the spectrum of activities and opportunities and challenges that ACM has is so broad. So it is, it's exciting, but also humbling to try to address these challenges and move, take the organization forward. And the other thing that is I shouldn't say surprising, because I always knew of the great quality of the volunteers that step forward and help our organization. And the same thing is for the staff of ACM, the permanent staff that help support and to implement all the things that the volunteers and the community brings forward. Still, although I knew all this, I was really surprised by the dedication. I was really surprised by the willingness of the people to either donate their time when it comes to volunteers or when it comes to staff, to really go beyond the call of duty, to really they're not just, speaking of the staff, they're not just employees, they're believers in what we do. And ACM is their home, and every particular thing that they have is their baby. And the same thing goes for volunteers. Tremendous spectrum of volunteers, many hundreds of volunteers when it comes to volunteering in horizontal policy issues like the practitioners board that you led and you are a member of still, or the technology policy council and so on and so forth. We have a whole bunch of them, but also the volunteers that are more in the academic research publishing venue, you know, program committee members, reviewers, and so on and so forth. The dedication that there's thousands now, if we go into the publication centered volunteers, is amazing, and it only gives you power to continue and do even more than what you thought you could do in the past. It is that dedication of volunteers and staff. As I said, it was not surprising, but still it was beyond what I could imagine, and it is very inspiring. So that's in a nutshell what surprised me. The other another aspect of ACM that was if you want, I came to realize its magnitude is the impact that computing has in today's society. I mean, it's obvious all around us. Nothing can happen without computing. The impact that we have, and therefore the social responsibility that comes because of this impact is tremendous. But the role that ACM has, a scientific professional organization for computing, that ACM is and represents, is the sky's the limit. And this is a major element that I may have had some ideas in the beginning, but now from the inside and every single step I take within the organization, it's always like opening a new door or opening a new window and seeing one more thing that could be done. And of course, not everything can be done, but it's amazing. I've been trying to visit and be close to all the major boards and council meetings, including those that are regionally oriented. So I've been to the ACM Europe Council meeting, the most recent one, last week, to the ACM India Council meeting about a month ago, and various major conferences. For example, at the end of I just came back yesterday, actually, from the main technology symposium, technical symposium of the SIGC, the Special Interest Group on Computer Science Education. A very big meeting, more than 1,500 educators there, and the challenges that computing education, I won't say computing science or computing engineering, but computing education has at all levels. Definitely the tertiary education, university, college, but the differences between the various types of institutions that offer after post-high school education, but also what do you do in high schools, what do you do in even the lower levels of our education. It's tremendous, it's amazing. And there are social issues, how if there are elements of students or teachers that are marginalized, how do you bring them into computing? Or the actual technology itself, how do we teach computing? It is such a rich area where intellectually challenging that all the members of our community that are into it serve humanity, serve society. They create the new computing professionals, and how to do that and how to be inclusive of everyone. It's a tremendous challenge, but also tremendous opportunity. So I knew I was in a rich field, and ACM, was trying to capture everything, but the riches that I could find there are still keep surprising me and keep growing my appetite for what I can do as president to entice the community to go into it. It's an amazing beginning of the journey in my term, but also even beyond. I know I will be much richer, and therefore I will be able to continue helping us in many ways that I didn't imagine before.
That's really fascinating, Yannis, because what you've indicated is that you can see the depth of capability and passion and commitment of the volunteers, but also of the staff, which is the founding sort of foundational intellectual property culture of the organization. And the two working together, the volunteers with the staff, and almost like a partnership. And then you talked about traveling around the world and actually sampling, more than sampling, being embedded into the different parts of the ACM to get a better idea of just the breadth and the depth of where everything is going. And you being thrilled, in essence, by the sort of the resources that are there and unlocking all of the resources, and also with this realization, the importance of computing, because computing is embedded everywhere, and it's essential now to really the progress of business and industry and government and media and education and research. It's just embedded in every aspect. And because of your presidency, you've been able to embrace and embed into all of these different aspects, and it's shown you the power and the capability that can be unleashed by leveraging all of these kind of capabilities. So that's really fascinating. That in fact, it's even probably giving you more empowerment of what the possibilities are. So let's talk about what we talked about this earlier in our first interview, but now you brought shape into the different aspects of the task forces you created, and maybe we can get into more of that. What are some of the task forces? In fact, can you sort of give a description of the different ones and what your objective is, and then what you hope to accomplish by invoking these task forces? So, and it's really a commitment of your when you became president, right? In the Q&A and the dialogue leading up, and in your position statement, you indicated you wanted to transform this organization into the next quarter century. And so what are the vehicles you're using to do that? If you can get into more detail of that.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, when I was a candidate for president, together with Joe Constant, the other president, we set up a process to hear what the members wanted, to hear what the members were worrying about, and to present to them answers not on premeditated things that we had in mind, but on things that would react on the members' requests and questions and so on and so forth. And in this process, I ended up promising various things. So I was giving answers, I'll promise this, I'll do that, and so on and so forth. And after I got elected, I went back and saw that in all this process, I've ended up promising the formation of 10 presidential task forces to address various things, and I'll come into the details. And not being a politician, I cannot forget about what I promised. I want to realize what my promises were. And this grand plan, if you want, I call it ACM 4.0, because, as you said, this year is our 76th year of history, and so we are entering the fourth quarter century of ACM's life. So therefore, it's the fourth quarter century. Therefore, it's ACM 4.0. I'll briefly explain, what these 10 presidential task forces are, and then maybe for some of them we can go into more details. Incidentally, these are task forces, which means that a group of people, leaders and others, volunteers, with the help of staff, always in a limited amount of time, a few months, 4, 6, 8, depending on the magnitude of the issue, they will study an urgent, current challenge that ACM has, and then they will come up with a roadmap. They will come up with a plan on how to proceed. And then ACM will take this report, this roadmap, and so on and so forth, and will proceed with more permanent efforts in order to move forward, especially for the longer term challenges. So 3 of these 10 task forces are related to the membership, the members, what we call members of ACM. And the 3, one is we should look into a new membership model. Things are changing. Our membership model is several decades old. Who becomes a member, how they become a member. There is a financial aspect of membership, which I want to keep separately. The model of who is a member and what type of member they are is one thing, and then what are the fees that someone has to pay in order to be a member is an orthogonal issue. But one, we look into the membership model, looking at the statistics, how people, who becomes member, why they become member, if they are staying as a member, and so on and so forth. If they're from students, they become professionals, what changes there. So looking at this entire aspect of membership and types of membership and pathways to become a member is one task force. Because, and I mentioned this first because ACM is a professional, it's a member-based scientific professional organization. So the shareholders, the stakeholders, the clients, if you want, of why ACM exists is to serve the members. So it is a fundamental aspect of coming up with the right membership model that is appropriate for an organization, that is entering its 4th quarter century of life. And one aspect of that, I may come back to that later, is that the number of computing professionals, and I'm not talking about users of Office or of a word editor or something like this, a text editor, but those that are sophisticated users and creators of computing software, hardware, and so on and so forth. This is growing tremendously because society, as you said, we cannot do anything without computing. Therefore, the number of computing professionals grows. It's estimated now that about 60 million people and growing around the world. So how can you serve this community? And how can we attract them and help them through ACM products and services and so on? So this is one task force. The second task force is the second and third are focusing on particular constituencies with respect to members and how we can grow. So the second task force is about globalization. ACM was founded in the US with a focus of research, and then it was originally just for the East Coast, Eastern Association of Computing Machinery, then it became national, and then it became global, but still the legacy is there, and just shy of 50% of its members come from North America, US and Canada. So the second task force is about globalization, how you can truly make ACM a global organization so that it's true to its mission that calls for a global organization. And that's what we're trying. And because the percentage, if you look at the computing professionals, it's not that 50% of them are in North America. It's much more widespread. So what are the mechanisms to come up and make ACM a truly global organization? And the third one is youthification. How do you bring the youth, the young professionals, the students, or those that are entering industry or going to academia they're young professionals, assistant professors, junior software engineers, and so on and so forth, to come into ACM, to offer them services, to offer them a home that makes sense for them. And the young generation in general it's not part of their way of thinking of belonging to organizations. I mean, a few decades ago, when I was a young assistant professor, a student, it was so natural for me to belong to ACM and IEEE, by the way. But now this, and it was, if you want, a self-proven issue that, you know, you have to belong. Now this is not the case, but still the young generation believes and is in need of other things. So what are the things that ACM can offer to these people to help their career, to help their paths, and bring them into the ACM family so that, you know, they volunteer, they give back, and so on and so forth. So membership model, globalization and youthification, or is a cluster of 3 presidential task forces that will address issues about the members of ACM and who can be there. Then there are 2 presidential task forces that address issues on ACM activities that are not addressing its members primarily, but the entire society. I mean, ACM does a lot of things about education. I mean, it produces the curriculum, the computing curricula, either the general computer science curriculum or others, data science, cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. So it's not only for its members. It offers things to society, to the computing community in general and society at large. So 2 new presidential task forces will be addressing 2 issues that are societal. One is in relationship to the code of ethics of ACM. ACM has established the code of ethics close to 30 years ago, and which has been revised and reformed and be brought up to date 4 or 5 years back. And its new code of ethics is truly a crown of jewel. A jewel crown, I mean, a crown of jewel, a jewel crown. And many societies around the world, national or international, have adopted it as is, because it really captures the depth of the conscience of the profession. And but this code of ethics which is very important. It has a whole bunch of things to be looked at even more deeply. Its impact. How do we bring it into our everyday lives? How do we apply it? If you are a young professor or a professional in industry, how do you bring this into your everyday steps, your activities as you perform your job, as you write a piece of software? So this requires, and also how is this related to possibly a slightly different set of values that your employer may have, which is a company or a government or a not-for-profit? How do you reconcile such differences? And as an individual who you want to abide by this code, because codes of ethics always apply to individuals, and yet the environment may be different. How do you apply it, and how do you bring it to the level so that legal entities, as I said, industry, governments, and so on and so forth, can take advantage of the code or embrace it or bring issues in it that are that affect them? So all this discussion, and it's not just technologies being discussing things like this, but philosophers, ethicists, sociologists, a tremendous spectrum of people from social sciences and humanities, next to us technologists, need to come together and look into the code of ethics. And then how do you promote it, of course, because it's a crown jewel that is hidden in the, I'm exaggerating, in the vaults of ACM, but it needs to be out and shared. So how do you promulgate its use? And the second presidential task force, which is, all the PTFs are important for me. That's why I promised them, and I'm forming them. But this one is really close to my heart, is how do you create pathways and activities to help the ACM members and computing community to address and solve the challenges related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There is no single goal that can be resolved without computing. And 17 UN SDGs have 169 targets and indicators and so on. Every single one of them, in order to be resolved, to be addressed and solved eventually, needs computing. So how can ACM be a meeting point of those that have the challenge, they have the knowledge about the domain challenge itself, and computing professionals, academicians, people from industry, and so on and so forth, come together and address some of them. So that particular PTF will look into mechanisms for this, and then I can come back and say a couple more things about this. So this is 5. 2 more presidential task forces have to do with particular products and services that ACM will be looking at in what ACM gives to the world, its members, or in general, besides the specific things that I mentioned. One of them is in general, the product and service portfolio of ACM. Looking into coming up with a SWOT analysis. What are the challenges, opportunities, the threats, and so on. Currently there is a portfolio of products and services that ACM has. Well, taking a critical look at all this, does it serve everyone? Does it serve well whoever every product or service serves? What are new things that would make a tremendous difference in members of in the lives of some community members, computing community members? So this is one thing, to look at the entire portfolio. And actually, this may also be a more permanent thing that we'll keep looking into this. It's not a snapshot and then 25 years later we'll look at it again. We have to be agile. We have to be adapting continuously to the changes of the needs. And the other one is another one close to my heart, specific for researchers, those that related to open science. ACM is on a good path to offer open access of all the publications that it has and its data sets, both listening to a bottom-up grassroots demands of the community to be open for the results of the research that researchers and scientists in general are doing, but also top-down. There are governmental mandates in Europe, in the US, Canada, Korea, in other parts of the world, and slowly with slightly different paths, but it doesn't matter. But they say, if the public money, if the taxpayers' money paid for research, then the results should be openly available to society. And it's not only that, but also how do you conduct your research in an open way? And how do you incorporate openness, not just in the results of your work, but also in every step, in every path? Be open about your methods. Be open about your reviews. Be open about and be accountable of what you create or what you write. Be open to collaborations. More and more research is needed, and open science calls for this, because that's the only way to innovate more, to accelerate progress in research. So there will be a past presidential task force on open science. A big aspect of open science, by the way, is reproducibility, which is a holy grail for research, often never reached. Everything that you produce, you have to give enough information so that someone else can reproduce it. Otherwise, who knows what happened, and your results are not reliable. So this is that. And there are 3 presidential task forces that are more internal for the operations of ACM itself. One has to do with a new financial model. With all of the other changes that I mentioned that will be coming, you may need a new financial model, which is different from what currently we have. One has to do with bylaws. A bunch of things have been around, and there are rules of procedures that we follow. But some of them, require rethinking and revamping, and possibly changing in order, to look into our 4th quarter century of life with a more modern view. And finally, to spread the staff in other parts of the world to serve better the local needs that may exist now. Pretty much all staff is in the US, in the New York office. But there is the sense is that if some of additional staff exists in Europe, in India, in China, in Latin America, in Africa, and so on, members will be served better. So this is the 3rd more internal presidential task force. So this is the grand plan, if you want, in one breath for what we'll be doing in the next few months.
Okay, because there are so many topic areas here, I'll just quickly sort of reiterate all of them just from what I can remember. But also, I should mention that typically a president takes on 1 task force and you're taking on 10. So that's a remarkable goal and really game-changing, and also speaks to your courage as well, and taking on 10 task forces. So let me summarize what I've heard very quickly, and then I'll get your response on taking on 10. And I think it's just such a big mandate as well. So you talked about 3 PTS, or presidential task forces, around membership. So the new membership model, because you know what, there's all these different kind of communities out there. How do you embrace these different communities in some way? Because all of them use computing and can contribute to ACM. And you talked about, rather than having concentrations in, let's say, North America and other regions, really being truly global, let's say Africa, more into Southeast Asia, South America, embracing youth, because Gen Z and Alpha generation have different attitudes, so making sure that we're meeting their needs. Then you talked about 2 PTS, presidential task forces, around services to society. And ACM is famous for their code of ethics. In fact, this organization called IFIP, which is a organization of organizations, a federation of computing organizations, has actually embraced the code of ethics because they think it's such a great model. So that's an example. And then, of course, we have these famous UN Sustainable Development Goals that came out in 2015. And all of them require computing. So why not making sure that we address those in terms of services to society? You also talked about 2 presidential task forces addressing services to ACM members, and you talked about open science being something you've been really an advocate of for so long, transparency, because that makes and can accelerate research if you're very open and sharing in some way. And then increasing the products and services portfolio, but being agile, not just staying one snapshot and addressing it, but having a continuing agile way of making sure you're addressing the needs of the membership itself, and those even beyond the membership of ACM. And then you talked about one in terms of finances. Because of all of these changes, well, it looks like we're going to have a new financial model, or have some changes to the financial model. And then you finally talked about 2 presidential task forces about ACM internal processes. So regional offices, so you have representation, because you're global and you're youth-oriented. You want to make sure that there's representation throughout the world in ACM and how it's working. So you have localized, personalized services in different regions. And of course, this may result in some kind of change in the bylaws, because the bylaws are quite old. Many of the foundational bylaws are old, though they've been updated over time. But because you're setting up a new vision for the next quarter century, then this may require some kind of changes in the bylaws themselves. So I believe I summarized your 10 areas sort of quickly, not to the detail you did. Did I miss anything in my overview?
No, I think you were perfect. Excellent summary. I'll use the recording for other purposes of your summary of the presidential task forces. Amazing. You caught the essence of everyone. I just have one comment that you said in the beginning, that the president usually takes one and I take 10. It means courage. Well, I only took upon and am establishing 10. We are establishing 10 because it was obvious from the members and also from everyone's sense that we need these things. And therefore, trying to be true and serving the community, serving the membership was very important for me, or trying to do the best anyway in this direction. And second, my courage is only intimately dependent on the courage and the generosity of the volunteers that will come forward and staff, if you want, this populate these presidential task forces and donate their time and expertise and experience to do that. So it's a group effort. The more volunteers that we'll have stepping up from all constituencies, young and more senior, more experienced, around the world, industrial research, educators, all of this. So my courage is only because I see and I expect and hope that many people will come together. And then it will be, if you want, an easy job for me, riding next to all these great people around me. So it is all in the volunteers and staff that we can make this reality.
I mean, prior to the interview here, we talked about, you indicate it's a village. It's going to take a village. It's going to take a little bit of teamwork between staff and volunteers to make this happen. But it also reflects an inflection point in the history of this wonderful organization called the ACM, or Association for Computing Machinery. You have a 2-year term. So how do we make this sustainable?
How do we make it sustainable? I was born an optimist. So I believe that given that most of them came, from real needs of members, and seeing the reactions in this master plan, if you want, from the members of the executive committee, the council, the reactions in the various events that I've been through. I mean, talking to people at the Supercomputing Conference or the ACM India, ACM Europe Council, various other smaller bodies, the 60 conference that I mentioned. And I intend to, in the next few months, going to other conferences, and also reactions I got from my piece at the communications of the ACM, where I had a column in last month's issue with the 10 presidential task forces. I think these 10 PTFs reflect true needs, true desires of the community. So what will come out of their work, and some of it, as I said, maybe short term, some maybe require longer effort. I believe whoever comes succeeds me in the presidency and the entire executive committee and so on will pick it up and reach it possibly, but will continue in those paths. It is so I'm optimistic that whatever changes come up, they will not be, something that will be short-lived and then someone will get rid of it. So in that sense, I think addressing long-term issues will guarantee the sustainability of whatever solutions these PTFs come with. Of course, it's also a recursive issue. Assuming that a good thing is done, it will serve the members better. And then you'll have more members or more volunteers joining forces to implement the results of what these PTFs will come forward. And for some of them, I have to admit, I hope that we'll get some funding from organizations that are in the computing field, and they will help us in achieving especially our social responsibility tasks with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or with the Code of Ethics, or some of the other products and services we may want to bring to the fore, or with the regional offices. So to implement, I mean, there are a bunch of ideas, myself, of the council, and so on, for each PTF. The detailed work, hopefully will start very soon, this month, next month. Eventually, what the plan will be, for some of them will require some funding that is beyond the normal, if you want, flow. ACM will invest, but we look forward to making believers out of computing industry and computing the computing community members to help us financially or with their time and expertise to make it. And if we do this right, I think it's always my experience that if you come up with the right with a good thing, people react and come forward and help in whatever way they can. So I look forward to that, and this effort come up with a result, as you said, to make it sustainable.
So what I'm hearing then is you're looking also for co-investors. So you're investing in this future, and because it's a groundswell of support, I mean, this came from the membership. These are the things that they're interested in. And so you already have this within the community, these 10 task ideas, concepts to move forward into the organization, to make the organization sustainable. And then you have you're looking for co-investment as well. So it's not just investors coming in and doing it, but you're also investing. So it's co-investing, working together to shape
Absolutely
a sustainable, better future for not just the ACM, but for all the communities that the ACM touches, which is everybody, because it's such an important organization.
Exactly.
Does that capture that
Absolutely
aspect? Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, ACM has a mission. I won't repeat it here, but it has a mission to serve society, and also both the computing professionals and society at large, with advancing the art, the science, the engineering, and application of computing. I'm repeating parts of the mission now. And within that, my vision anyway for ACM is to really change the world, to make it a better place. And we are socially responsible for doing that, as I said, because of the impact that computing has in everything that we do. For ACM and empower their strength. Things individuals can do only that much. We have to come together. And ACM is, for me, a meeting point. It's a home that if we bring all the good things that everyone can bring in, our experience, our knowledge, our particular thematic expertise within computing, or our general, understanding of the world, or the particular cultural background that we may have, we need all this to come together so that 1 + 1 is not 2, but 100. And ACM needs to react to this challenge and become that place. And it will invest some of its financial assets that it has, and also all the experience that its staff has and its long-term volunteers. But we need more co-investment, both in the financial sense, as I said, from industry, from others who can help in the vision of ACM and in the particular pathways that these presidential task forces will open, but also co-invest of time, of volunteers. We have a tremendous spectrum of volunteers at various levels. I mean, after my presidency, I'll continue being a volunteer, and not just as past president, which is an official, already predefined term, but in general, like I've been volunteering for the past almost 20 years. But we need a lot more to come and volunteer for the things that is closer to each one's heart. So co-investment of time also is very critical. So time is money, money is time. We need co-investment of both in order to push forward.
So I just want to summarize it and some of the things that I've heard over this interview in the past one, where ACM is positioned. And if I missed anything, if you can fill in the gaps, and then I'm going to ask for your final recommendations, and that will be the last question of the interview. So what I'm hearing is ACM has a 76-year history, definitely number one in computing science. It's a community of over 110,000 members with over 4 million users of services across more than close to 200 different conferences, many number one in the world, across 78 journals and newsletters, many of them number one in the world, across 38 special interest groups, which are organizations unto themselves, again, many number one in the world, the top awards in the industry, that number one digital library at computing science research and so on, again, number one in the world, and with many different programs and services to fit a wide variety of people in the community. And now ACM is on a program to even deliver more services and to be attuned with the way the future of the world is shaping from a demographic standpoint, and to address some of the challenges and opportunities, for example, with the UN SDGs and so on. So that's where the ACM is positioned. So why wouldn't the community, the broader community and others want to support this? Because ACM has played such an important role with computing embedded in every area, from healthcare to new kinds of science generation, no matter where you are, and you mentioned it earlier, even the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, it's not possible to address them fully without having some computational elements. So really it's embedded everywhere. So the time has come to shine for the ACM and to continue to proliferate and grow to meet the needs of today's generation, and also future generation. So I wanted to kind of encapsulate where ACM is positioned. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you, once again, you captured it perfectly. It is, I mean, one thing I want to say, you talked about computing science. Well, I want to stress it's computing science, but also computing engineering, but also computing application, computing art, and so on. So it is not just the science, because the science is foundation. I'm a scientist, but the levels of intellectual depth that computing has are many, and ACM is trying to embrace all of them, because we need all of them in order to achieve, to fulfill our mission and achieve our vision. And ACM is indeed number one, the computing society in the world, but it has to live up to this number one continuously. And now a bunch of challenges are in front of us, a bunch of questions and demands and needs from society or the computing community are in front of us. And ACM has to step up to the challenge and continue being number one. Being number one is not a vision, it's not a mission, it's not a goal. It's only a result of what you do. And what I want as president and the ACM Council, the Executive Committee, and so on, we are all in tune with this, is to really do the right things. ACM is all about excellence. We believe in excellence. We believe in ethics. And we believe in diversity, in inclusion. Everyone has to be part of what we do. Nobody should be left behind. These are the beliefs. And we are a computing professional society of members And we want to move forward in order to serve us as a community, but also society. What do I want to say to the computing professionals or to those that listen will listen to this interview? It's a call. I am ACM. How about you?
I love that message, right? I mean, you're really a call for being embraced and saying, come into the fold and let's work together for a better world. So
exactly.
Well, Yannis, thank you for coming in and sharing your marvelous vision with my audience. And it's such a beautiful vision as well. And you're taking action. You're executing. You got the task force form. You're going to have a report completed. So to drive the roadmap of execution. So thank you again for sharing so much and doing so much for the world.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure as always.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.